Darth Vader, born Anakin Skywalker, was a middle-aged human male born on Tatooine 41 years before the Battle of Yavin. Darth Vader was a young boy when Jedi Master Qui-Gon Jinn found him on Tatooine as a slave. Sensing the boy's high concentration of Force sensitivity, Jinn freed the boy and took him to the Jedi Temple, where he would go on to learn under Obi-Wan Kenobi. Vader would go on to progress his skills quickly as a Jedi, especially during the Clone Wars. Many Jedi suspected that he was the chosen one who would bring balance to the Force and destroy the Sith. However, by the end of the Clone Wars, he would have a hand in destroying all known Jedi through Order 66. He spearheaded the attack against the Jedi Temple and would be known as one of the greatest Jedi killers of all time. He would then become the enforcer of the new Galactic Empire, ruling by way of fear tactics. The prophecy would not be realized until much later, when Vader would go on to murder his master, Darth Sidious, destroying all Sith from the galaxy. Darth Vader was a powerhouse, but the question lies in which version of himself was the better combatant, his pre-suit rage-filled younger self, or his older, cybernetic self. As with all my videos, I will be comparing these two in their primes. The twist of this video is actually determining when the prime for this character is, so I'll be putting pre-suit Vader versus the suited Vader. I've gotten this request a lot, especially on my Bane vs Vader video, so I'm going to go in depth between the potential fight between the two. I will be pitting them together as if they did not know one another. For pre-suit Vader, I see his prime during the initiation of Order 66, just before he faced Obi-Wan Kenobi. For the cybernetic Vader, I see his prime as just after, when he would partake in the completion of the Jedi Purge. Pre-suit Vader stood just under 2 meters tall. His time during the war would develop him into a hardened warrior with increased endurance, able to maintain fights for several minutes, as evidenced by his encounters with Asajj Ventress and Obi-Wan Kenobi. He also attained a great level of speed, often leaping towards his opponents in fights. He would also often use force augmentation to enhance his already astounding strength and speed, becoming a blur of motion to most that watched him fight. It is also worth noting that Vader was highly resistant to pain, clinging to life even after experiencing 4th-degree burns to the bone. Of his time, he was one of the most athletic and pain-resistant Sith of his era, and the era of his past. The cybernetic Darth Vader stood over 2 meters tall in his suit. Though he no longer had any living limbs and was supported by a cybernetic suit, it actually did not deter him. On many occasions, Vader would take direct hits to his suit and was still able to maintain his composure during a fight. At first, Vader was very clumsy and stiff in his new suit. For a majority of his life, he had access to all 3 of his limbs, and it was a jarring change for him initially. However, over a short few weeks and months, he was able to find comfort in his suit and utilized it to his advantage. Before his suit, Darth Vader's force rage already afforded him strength and dexterity. Though his dexterity and agility would diminish, his suit forced him to rely more on skill than raw abilities. However, his suit was a huge handicap. His main control panel was exposed on the chest, which he spent most of his time defending in a duel. Also, he could not survive very long without his helmet, which supported his breathing. Still, Vader maintained to be a powerhouse and was nowhere near a pushover, a testament many of his opponents would agree to. Though the suited Vader was a powerhouse, pre-suit Vader was in his prime with most of his living limbs. They both had similar builds and equal strength, but Vader's cybernetic suit, though giving him strength, would be a disadvantage against the younger Vader. The Cybernetic Vader was capable of dealing a large amount of damage, but pre-suit Vader's high resistance to pain would undermine his attempts. Therefore, I give the edge to pre-suit Vader in terms of physical abilities. Pre-suit Vader was born with the highest midichlorian count in the entire galaxy. However, this would ultimately hamper his overall use of the Force, as he would often have overconfidence in his abilities and would lack tactical variety. It was his hubris that hindered his further studies of the Force. Though he trained much later than most of his peers at the age of 9, his skills progressed much faster than theirs, feeding into his arrogance. It's similar to a talented basketball player who never practices because he had natural ability with the sport. Eventually, others would advance their skill because they practice and hone their skills, while the star stays stagnant in their skill set. This would happen with Vader, whose Force powers were matched by Obi-Wan Kenobi by the Clone Wars' end. Obi-Wan Kenobi, who was not especially talented in the Force, trained and honed his skills, able to match the powerful Force push of the great Anakin Skywalker. However, Darth Vader was extremely strong on the Force, able to Force jump great distances and deflect others' Force maneuvers. Not to mention he had an extremely advanced skill for Force choke, even before he was identified as a Sith. What's more, he also had an ability in beast control, as he would showcase in the Geonosian arena. He also held a great aptitude for the special sixth sense in the Force, both large and minute. His sense would help him attune to immediate action, as it did when he sensed Padme was about to be bitten by 2 Cahoons. It would also help him with predicting the future, as he would go on to predict the deaths of both his mother and wife. Though Vader was arrogant and lacked variety in his Force abilities, it did not change the simple fact that he held the largest raw ability in the Force of anyone in the galaxy. For the Cybernetic Vader, it was his limitations which led him to gain more skill in the Force, though his raw ability had dissipated. However, it is noted that Vader was never fully submersed in the dark side, and thus never met his full potential. Additionally, the lingering guilt he had would hamper many of his abilities. However, Vader still had the most Force potential of any other living being, though it is acknowledged that his power was 8/10 of his master Darth Sidious. And had he not been mutilated, he would have been twice as powerful than he was. His degradation of power would be so disappointing to Sidious that he would even attempt to replace Darth Vader on several occasions. Even without Vader's full potential realized, he had an arsenal at his disposal, and he knew how to make his arsenal work effectively. He was an advanced user of telekinesis, as showcased during his duel with Luke Skywalker on Bespin, even able to hurl objects at him without breaking his lightsaber moveset. This would also enable him to utilize the Force throw technique, which he would use on Luke again years later. Darth Vader was an advanced user of Force choke, able to apply the ability to those not even in his direct vicinity, as showcased with several of his admirals in Empire Strikes Back. This would also extend to his ability to crush his opponents' internal organs. What's more, Darth Vader was also an advanced user of Tutamentis. This power allowed its user to absorb high concentrations of energy, including blaster bolts, lightning, and even lightsabers. Vader has used this ability several times, including against Han Solo at Bespin. He also acquired a skill in telepathy, able to communicate directly to another's mind, possibly even able to place doubt and fears in others. On a similar note, he was able to use Force Cloak to great effect, hiding his Force signature to others. Though he did use the Force to augment his physical attributes, it did not have the same effect as it did before his suit. Rather, he was supported mostly by his cybernetics in regards to his natural abilities, whereas his suit would give him superhuman strength. Unlike most Sith, Vader did not possess the ability to conjure Force lightning. Actually, he had the ability, but the power would disable his suit and cause more pain to him than his opponent. Therefore, he avoided its use altogether. Vader is an interesting Sith. Before his suit, he nearly met his full potential but was blinded by his rage. And when he had the suit, he never met his full potential because his guilt and his cybernetics held him back. I may be crucified by this comparison, but pre-suit Vader was like a newborn vampire from Twilight. He had raw power that was ballistic and untrained. Suited Vader, by contrast, was a mature vampire who could control that raw emotion and employ it with more grace. As a young Sith, his arrogance would leave him with a rudimentary application of force powers, though his applications were powerful. One with natural talent but little discipline would find themselves in a tight spot against an experienced opponent, a la Vader versus Obi-Wan. Though this would not be the case with the cybernetic Vader. As an older Sith, his humility would leave him with a varied skill set, yet his force powers were ultimately weaker. So it is hard to determine which of these two would get the definitive edge. Does one consider raw talent better than experience? Or does the seasoned veteran trump the new recruit? Initial thoughts would indicate that experience trumps talent, as would be showcased with Vader's duel with Obi-Wan. Still, Vader was able to power through other powerful Jedi within the temple, including the renowned Sin Drawlig. Granted, Drawlig was geared more to his lightsaber combat than his force abilities. A second thought would point to talent trumping experience, especially when that talent hit was almost limitless. However, that talent was hindered by blind rage and arrogance. Consequently, and quite frankly, it would be hard to determine who would get the edge. Ultimately, I think pre-suit Vader's raw ability would match up evenly to the suited Vader's experience. Therefore, I cannot give the decided edge to either, and I declare these two as equals in regards to their force abilities. As a Jedi, pre-suit Vader carried a relatively standard hilt with a slanted emitter and center hand grip block. Because of his rapid change to the Sith, his lightsaber crystal remained blue until he lost it to Obi-Wan Kenobi. Lightsaber combat quickly became Vader's favorite activity, even in spite of his studies of the Force. Like his former master, he would dabble in Surisu, the all-defensive form, and Ataru, the high-energy acrobatic form. However, his preference would be in the fifth form of lightsaber combat, Xian and Jimso. He would advance his skills quickly with these forms, as they enabled him to draw from his mounting strength and overconfidence. The fifth form was geared towards an offensive onslaught, stemming from a counter defense. Users of the form would often turn their blocks and parries into instant counters and strikes. At first, I believe Vader trained himself in the Xian form, as the first 10 years of his Jedi career would be against blaster-wielding foes. Specifically, the Xian variant of Form 5 was geared towards a counter to blasters, blocking the laser bolts and rebounding them back towards the caster. This is one of the reasons why he could not defeat Count Dooku. During his training, he would also dabble in Form 6, which involved dual-blade fencing, though he would say his practice of it was only an exercise. He would go on to attempt its use against Count Dooku, but to no avail. His defeat to Dooku would propel him to refine his use of Form 5, training more exclusively with the lightsaber dueling-oriented Jimso. This newfound confidence and refinement would grant him a strength that would serve him well throughout the Clone Wars against Asajj Ventress and multiple rematches with Count Dooku. In fact, in their final duel together, Dooku acknowledged that Vader had become the most refined and masterful users of the Jimso technique, as he would use his brute strength to power through his opponent's weak defense. The cybernetic Darth Vader would still be feared as an extraordinary duelist, killing several dozens of Jedi during the end of the Purge. Initially, Vader was a Jimso master, though almost exclusively. It was not until he donned his cybernetic suit that he looked into other lightsaber forms. Jimso still suited him well, as the lack of mobility his suit allowed him did not hinder his strong kinetic strikes. In fact, In some cases, his suit enabled him even stronger strikes than before. Though he implemented Surisu and Ataru in his previous dueling style, as half a machine he would add Makashi and Juyo. Though Ataru was known for his acrobatics, Vader adapted only its blade work into his style, and he used Surisu as a way to protect his suit from lethal strikes. He added Makashi probably because of how well Dooku used it against him in their many duels together. Makashi was a pure lightsaber form, which had a style akin to that of fencing. And Vader would have a special use of it at the beginning of the Galactic Empire, as he would engage in many lightsaber battles. The Juyo form would enable him to tap into his newfound rage and unleash a barrage of lightsaber strikes at his opponents. Like most experienced lightsaber duelists, Vader implemented all forms of lightsaber combat, becoming one of the most well-rounded duelists ever. He was a powerhouse in terms of his offense and an unmoving stone in his defense. Each of his strikes were aimed for a killing blow, which made fighting him extremely daunting. And the few times Vader had to go on the defense, he would lock his elbows close, blocking with an economy of few motions, immovable. Yes, Pre-Suit Vader was an accomplished duelist. At his height, he was able to take out an aging master of Makashi with his brute strength in Jim-So. However, the suited Vader was a much more accomplished duelist than his younger self. The older Vader's ailments created a disadvantage, which propelled him to adjust his skills to a measured perfection. The younger Darth Vader started as an accomplished Jim-So master, strengthened by his untapped rage in the dark side. But the suited Vader's staunch defense and enhanced strength with his cybernetics would be able to keep him at bay. And his experience would expand his skill set, making himself a more complete duelist. The suited Vader would not be able to break through Pre-Suit Vader's Jim-So alone, but he had Ataru's broad blade work, Makashi's precise stabs, and Juyo's unpredictable swings to utilize. Therefore, I give the edge to the cybernetic Darth Vader as a lightsaber duelist. The fight between Darth Vader and Darth Vader would be a battle to the last desperate effort. Both combatants were powerhouses of their time, but the cybernetic Vader would be outdone by the Pre-Suit Vader's fully functioning, pain-resistant body. Pre-Suit Vader was a master of Jim-So, but the suited Vader would have familiarity with the style and subvert it with his own experience and more refined style. Pre-Suit Vader was extremely tremendous in the Force, but he was limited in his application and variety. The cybernetic Vader would have his Force abilities hampered, but would use them with more variety and efficiency. Thus, their Force powers were equal, though in different regards. What's more, there was a difference in each Vader's tactical thinking. The younger Vader went into battle fast and hard, shooting first and asking questions later. Though he would gain some humility after a few defeats, with his newfound rage and confidence after his success at the Jedi Temple, he still went into battles head first. The older Vader was more calculated and approached his fights considering not only his own skill, but the skill of his opponent. It is also worth noting that he would adapt the Dune Mach tactic, implanting doubt and fear in his foes. We see him using this technique against Luke Skywalker in both their fights, especially as he tapped into his mind, sensing that Luke was hiding the identity of his sister. However, as it did with Dooku, it would backfire on Vader, as he would tap into a rage within Luke that gave him more strength to defeat him. The Duel of the Vaders would start off with Pre-Suit Vader opening with an Ataru lightsaber sequence, leaping straight out towards the dark-clad warrior. The cybernetic Vader would not even ignite his lightsaber initially, pulling a crate or branch or some other object between he and the young Vader. With his astounding speed, the young Vader would cut through the object, continuing his one-minded rage towards the machine. It would be at this point that the cybernetic Vader would ignite his lightsaber, engaging with his younger self. They would clash in battle in a fantastic showcase of Jim So, matching each other equally. They would lock each other's blades, and the cybernetic Vader would hiss an insult in regards to the younger Vader's unchecked rage. The younger Vader would angrily break off the lock and engage with Jim So again. His increased strength would catch the older Vader off guard, who will fall back to his experience with Surisu. The younger Vader would become frustrated, not able to penetrate Vader's defenses. In his rage, he would muster a powerful force push strong enough to push the cybernetic Vader back into a tree or a wall or a rock. He would keep him locked onto the wall with a force crush, mangling his control panel until the older Vader was able to get his arm free, employing a saber throw at his younger self. The pre-suit Vader would leap out of the way, breaking his force crush concentration. At this observation, the cybernetic Vader would start applying his telekinetic powers within his lightsaber sequences, sending branches or rocks or objects at the younger Vader to distract him from his Makashi offense. Their dance would last a long while. The younger Vader may even be able to damage his older self, mangling his helmet or cutting off an arm. But eventually, it would be Vader's continued use of distraction and tactical brilliance that would eventually whittle down his younger self. It would happen fast and quick. There would be no beatdown or crushing defeat. This duel would end with a quick Makashi stab or an unpredictable Juyo decapitation. And in an instant, it would be over. Thus, I declare the cybernetic Darth Vader, the chosen one of the Force, Lord of the Sith, the ultimate victor, and the ultimate prime of the Sith Lord. Of course, this is all my opinion. I would love to see your thoughts and comments. I always like discussing scenarios with you all. Do you think the younger Vader would will it out? Or do you agree that the older Vader is the prime? Peace, love, and may the Force be with you. Always. Though he implemented... Oh shit, what happened? Oh shit, what happened? Oh shit, my recording. What happened to it? No. Not now, I don't want to. My recording just got fucked, didn't it? No, don't fuck my recording. Oh, it didn't fuck it. It didn't fuck it. Okay, I'm gonna continue. Sorry.